Hello, my name is Rosa.
Hello, my name is Camilla.
My name is Elise.
My name is Israel.
My name is Jen.
So the question that we're going to answer today is, what are the risks of being civil disobedience? What are the risks of staying silent? So I put that I think the risk of being like civilly disobedience is like depends on the situation. So like if it's like something that affects everyone, like as entire society, then it might lead to like really bad consequences, like for example, as someone that it's like not from here, maybe they might target me for a certain reason or stuff like that. But I feel like if I were to stay silent, I will feel like I will have to deal with a lot of like discrimination or like oppression and like all this kind of stuff. So I think it's kind of like there's not really much of a like, I feel like it's kind of like a good thing, but at the same time a bad thing, from both. So it's a good thing that I'm able to kind of like stand up for something that I believe if people see as is disobedient. But also I feel like if I stay silent, it will be something that I will be like heavily affected on. So yeah.
What I put was that for what is the risk of civil disobedience, one way we've seen this is the kneeling that took place during the national anthem. So one of the players, Kaepernick, he had kneeled during the national anthem, and this led to him losing his job. So sometimes when we take protests, even if it's for good reasons, this could still lead to risks of you losing your job, just losing certain things in general. So the protest was supposed to be against racial injustice and police brutality, but even with that, it still ended up just costing his job in the end. It did lead to like more talks though, because it was something that like I guess seen as controversial, even though it really wasn't.
To add on to what you were saying, Elise, Colin Kaepernick did in a way sacrifice himself for like the well-being of like his loved ones and like people that are like him, because he knew that like he was in a position of power where he can reach a lot of people, especially since he was on like national TV and everyone would see what he was doing, his protest. So he took that opportunity and to like in a way speak up, and some people would see that as civil disobedience. I wouldn't really. Like, I think what he did was right, but the people that did not agree with him would call that civil disobedience, which is why I feel like civil disobedience is like depending on depending on the person, like how they view it. But like if he would have stayed silent, the situation would have stayed the same. But like you said, a lot more people are talking about it now. So he did make a change, although it ended up him having to sacrifice his job because some people didn't agree with him.
And I have an example for that too, of like how back in the day, like the racism, like as an example, like the Rosa Parks incident and the other incidents of like women and people that were facing segregation at the time that didn't want to give up their seats on buses. So that's an example of the segregation. I mean, a segregation defiance, because nobody wanted to give up their seats because it wasn't they didn't have to, they didn't want to, so they just sat there and stayed in their seat, and they said they're going to stay in their seat, and they faced a lot of things for that. But them doing that gave other people the opportunity. Like, it slowly became a thing to where like it wasn't a thing. It paved the way to
to like inspire more people.
Yeah.
And get rid of segregation.
Yeah, and like slowly start a movement, and like protest about it. There were a bunch of stuff about it. Yeah.
To add on to James's point, I feel like it was brought up some of the time, but I feel like more of the social risk of being socially or civilly disobedient was brought up. And I want to open with a quote from Stanford where it says, "People who engage in civil disobedience operate at the boundary of fidelity to law and have a general respect for their regime and are willing to accept the legal consequences of their actions as evidence of their fidelity to the rule of law." And I think most of the time when we think of civil disobedience, we either think of the social consequences that come with it or the legality that comes with it. But most of the time, both things end up happening because there were people trying to sue Kaepernick because what he did ruined the game for them, or they felt like it disrespected them in some way. And even with what James brought up with Rosa Parks, there were people that wanted her to go to jail because she technically broke the law at that time. And the risk of, making a statement, you have to be ready to face backlash. You have to be ready for being made an example of by your peers and maybe even by your own government. That's something that you have to take into consideration. It's definitely easier for people, like how Camila was saying, it's definitely easier for people like me to rise up and say something because you're not as easily targeted and you're more likely to not face as much social backlash as of somebody that pertains to the group they're fighting for. So, yeah, that was just what I wanted to add.
To add on to what Ezra said, you actually see that a lot happen in the book that we read, Brave New World. It's towards the end more when John kind of loses it and he sees after his mom died, and then he goes into the city and starts trying to throw the pills, and all of the people kind of just got mad at him and was like, why are you doing this? And it wasn't also just not mad, but it was also more annoyed too, because even though he was saying I'll lead you to freedom, I'll do all this for you, they were still annoyed by it because they didn't understand what he was doing or what he was saying about the soma pills being bad and something that would kill them. So he did face what you're saying, social backlash from that community because he wasn't a part of it. And they kind of just saw him, everything that had to pertain to John was something that they all laughed at because he wasn't a part of their world, I guess.
Even with the two of the friends, the main character and then I think he was the person who wrote all of the Hypnopedia. He was the guy who wrote the Hypnopedia was more ready for the social and legal backlash than I think his name was Bernard was. And he was even trying to deflect, saying that, he was never really a part of it. So he's a really good example of somebody who's okay with staying silent in public, but in closed doors he complains about it all the time.
Well, another example that I added for civil disobedience was when during COVID a lot of people didn't want to wear the mask and they started no, when it was mandatory because everyone was oh, you should wear your mask or get vaccinated so you can actually go to work, and people really risked their entire jobs because they didn't want to get vaccinated or they just didn't want to wear a mask. And I feel civil disobedience can be used as the kind of okay, we need this because we need a change, but also sometimes people use it as a way to I don't know, they don't really consider the effects they have on others, in a negative impact and not in a positive impact, kind of. So
it's kind of they use it to just sort of complain.
Yeah.
Even though it's something easy.
I think some of the people that didn't vaccinate right away were probably just scared because they didn't know what is in that vaccination. They don't really tell you. And some people don't have access to the resources to figure that out. So that's why they I wouldn't say except them not using their mask because that's something that's bare minimum you could do easily.
Yeah.
But like not getting vaccinated is something I feel like some people didn't do because they were scared, and yes, there were others that didn't do it because they just didn't want to. They just didn't think.
Yeah, because
It
they
was
like
real.
strongly didn't believe that like the virus was real. Because there were a lot of people who were like, oh, it's not real, like everything's fake.
Mhm.
So that's why they didn't want to get vaccinated.
Well, I do know that
Yeah.
in the beginning, people were waiting for the FDA to approve it, because it wasn't approved till like I think a little later, after. And then when the FDA approved it, that's when it became mandatory, and that's when it was supposed to be where everyone was getting it. And usually when the FDA approves that, that means that what's in it is fine and it's safe. Because they have to make sure everything that goes into the U.S., any drug especially, has to be safe for us to use.
I'm talking about like people who don't even know what the FDA is, like certain people that are just coming into the United States don't even know that's something they could use to rely on to like know whether something is safe or not.
I feel like if it's really not safe, then you wouldn't see celebrities and the president and people like that taking it, because normally if something isn't safe, they test it on smaller populations of people. So like
They tested.
because to solve certain diseases they have to take controlled groups of people, right? But if it really wasn't safe, they wouldn't use it on people that are of such social importance.
Yeah.
So I understand I can understand hesitancy maybe within like the first couple of days that it's there, but otherwise there's no excuse not to get vaccinated, because your president wouldn't put something in his body that would kill him, and your COVID-19 vaccination wouldn't be readily available to politicians before people if it really was dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And plus, no one was allowed, if it was like a problem with people coming into our country, no one was allowed to come in at around that time, because all borders were closed. So it was anyone who was in the United States, it was just people who had already been here. You know what I mean? Not anyone new coming in, because it was all closed down. You couldn't come in, you couldn't come out.
I mean, like people who don't know how to use the internet or like don't know
Yeah,
how
but
to
there was
access it,
also
but-
like stuff on TV about it, like commercials, because I remember seeing like commercials about it. Go get your vaccine today,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
FDA approved it. Or
Also, there was a
Well,
lot
that's
of
what-
misinformation.
I was talking about like before
vaccine.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Like a lot.
before
Yeah,
that
for
when
example,
there
because
weren't
my
vaccines.
grandpa, he like does not use like a lot of like, he doesn't know how to use like the internet in general. So he's always on like news and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes like he obviously doesn't understand Spanish. So I mean English. So he's always on Spanish news.
Uh-huh.
And for some reason, a Spanish news took a while to actually start talking about like the whole like vaccine thing. And like there were, I feel like, because Spanish news were like, no, like we don't know, like they were trying to like make people doubt
Mhm.
that it was real or not, because they wouldn't directly
Yeah.
say it, but they will kind of like, oh, we don't know what could happen, or we don't know, it's take it on your own
Yeah,
risk.
there's a lot of
And stuff
misinformation
like that.
going on with
Yeah, and it was kind of like a lot of the Hispanic community, I'm not just say, because didn't really want to like get vaccinated. My parents they got vaccinated because my dad actually caught COVID, and my dad was like, I'm getting vaccinated soon. But a lot of the people that didn't really get COVID, or like Hispanics that didn't really get COVID, they didn't really kind of like believed it at the beginning too, until like they actually started seeing a lot of like until the news actually started saying, hey yo, like you actually have to start getting vaccinated and stuff like that. So I believe even until like by the end of even until the beginning of 2022, a lot of the Spanish news kept talking about like vaccination and all this stuff. So it got to a point where like it kind of did increase the rate of people believing in at least within the Hispanic community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, pertaining to people protesting or having their social disobedience against mask mandates, would you guys participate in civil disobedience, and if so, which one? Or what topic would you pertain to for social disobedience?
What was the beginning of your question?
If you were to participate in social disobedience, what would make you participate in social disobedience? Like, what has to be there?
Support from other people, knowing that people actually care about the issues at hand, and that I'm not just being not there as not giving my input because I want to feel important too.
For me, it will be, I think, something that like really affects everyone, like as a society in general. Like I said before, I feel like something that can put everyone's lives on risk. You know, I feel like that will be kind of for me to be like, okay, you know, like, and it's not only affecting me and my family, but like also the people around me. You know, so I feel like that will be like my, like you said, like my thing will be like, oh, okay, I actually have to do something, you know. But yeah,
my reason was if the like the fairness, liberty, or like the health of anyone in our society was like at risk, or like being what's the word?
like, hold on, like, you know how in
Endangered.
Afghanistan they're taking girls like women's education, so it's kind of like like that problem, you know, because
If
Sorry.
any of their like liberties are being endangered, that's when I feel like I would participate in civil disobedience.
Yeah, I feel like if any of my rights are being taken away, like my given rights, like freedom of speech, if it was taken away, I would probably participate in active civil disobedience because that wouldn't. It's not fair for me to face that type of oppression. Yeah.
I think that I think I agree with James. I also heavily agree with what Camila and Rosa were saying. I think whenever laws are enacted to restrict people with human rights or things that have to do with everybody, so an example would be the environment, when those things are enacted, that would make me participate in civil disobedience, because I feel like not only is it an obligation to make sure that people are treated fairly and that people, the next generation, have a better life than you, but it's also important for people like me to understand the kind of privilege that a lot of other people don't have, and use that to do something greater with yourself, because it's just you were given this privilege so you could make sure that everyone else has that same privilege, because at the end of the day it doesn't feel nice to know that your friends or people you associate with are seen as lesser in the society you both grew up in. So for me, I would participate if anyone I do participate if people specifically their human rights are being taken away, because it's not fair to be treated as a lesser in a society where you're supposed to be equal.
Yeah. I agree. Should I have one more example of disobedience? I have one more example of civil disobedience. And I found in this article online, it was talking about in 1966 how New York serving alcohol to homosexuals was illegal, and it was and people were arrested for like serving alcohol to people who were gay in 1966, and people were also like many lives were destroyed in the result. Like people actually lost their lives. People like
they would go out and beat you up.
Yeah, or like mess you up.
They'd follow you
if
home.
you were served any alcohol. Or it's horrible.
It specifically pertained to trans people, because they would trans people would go and protest and sit at like a bar, and they would get verbally and physically harassed until they were either thrown out of the bar or one of them followed them home and beat them up.
Yeah.
It don't even happen in gay bars.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you.